Good day, students. Welcome to mathgotserved.com. In this clip, we're going to be going over how to compute factorials. To get us started, we're going to be taking a look at the meaning of what the factorial operation is. So the factorial of an integer is basically the product of that number and all the positive integers less than it. Or think about it as the product of an integer and every integer between that integer and 0. Okay? So for example, if you want to look at n factorial, where n is some integer, you're basically going to multiply n by every integer between n and 0. So n factorial is the same thing as n times n minus 1 times n minus 2. You follow that pattern all the way to 1. Okay? You do not add 0 here. So basically what you're doing is you are counting down from that integer all the way to 1, and you're finding the product of all those numbers. Okay? So that's basically what the factorial operation is. Now we have some examples here, problems 1 to 4. We're going to calculate the factorial of these 4 problems, and we are also going to show you how to use your calculator to find the factorial, to find these factorial expressions, and also go over some limitations that the calculators have when determining the factorial of certain factorial expressions. Alright, so let's start out by taking a look at question number 1. In number 1, we are to evaluate 5 factorial. Okay? So for number 1, what is 5 factorial? Now all you just have to do is just count down from 5 all the way to 1. You have 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So count down from 5 all the way to 1 and just find the product of all the integers between 0 and 5. So that's 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Okay? So if you want to multiply this, you can simply multiply 5 and 2, which is 10, times 4 times 3, which is 12. 12 times 10 will give you 120 as your final answer. Now let's go over how to use a TI calculator. This procedure that I'm going over applies to the 84 and 83 models. Whether plus or regular, it doesn't matter. Now how do you use the calculator to find factorials? Let's go ahead and go over that. So we'll type in 5 and then factorial. So the question is, where is this factorial operation in the calculator? Where there are 2 places you can find factorial. Let's go over the first one. The first place you can find factorial is basically where you can find every operator that the calculator has, including the functions. So where is that? It's located in the catalog. Okay, so if you take a look at the 0 button, the blue label on the upper left corner tells you catalog. To access that, you just press second function 0. It takes you to the catalog menu, and then you scroll up all the way till you hit the factorial operator. So we have the factorial operation right here. Hit enter, and then it's inserted after 5 factorial, hit enter, 120. So we can see that our answer is correct. Now another way you can find the factorial operation is in the probability menu under math. That's a little bit faster. So let's go over that. So if you take a look at your first column on the left, the third button is math underneath alpha right here. So that math button gives you access to different math functions and operations. Okay, so if I press math, take it off alpha, delete that. So if I press the math button, I have math, number, complex, and PRB. PRB represents probability. Okay, factorial is a key component in many probability computations when you're counting. possible outcomes or total number of outcomes, so that's why it's placed under that menu item. Okay, so if you want to access the probability menu, you can scroll to the right 3 times or just scroll to the left once, and you have random, you have permutation, combination, and take a look at what we have here, the factorial operation. Okay, so you can either scroll down to 4 or press the 4 button, which is faster, so I'll just press the 4 button, and there you have it. Okay, let's go over the procedure again. You press 5, and then the math button brings up this window. You want probability, so you scroll to the left. Probability is highlighted. You have these different options here. The factorial option is option 4. As soon as you press 4, factorial appears right after the 5. Press enter, and that's your final answer. Okay, let's take a look at the next example, number 2. We're going to be computing 4 factorial divided by 0 factorial. Okay, so 4 factorial can be broken down completely into the product of all the numbers, all the positive numbers greater than less than 4. So it's going to be 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Now this is an interesting question. What is 0 factorial? 0 factorial is the same thing as 1 factorial, which is just 1. Okay? Alright, so this is how you have it written out. And then we multiply everything and divide by 1. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. Your final answer is 24. Now let's go over how to enter this quotient of 2 factorials in the calculator. So you have 4 factorial, so math, probability, option 4, divided by 0 factorial, 0, math, probability, option 4. Enter 24. You can see that our answer is correct. Now let's go over an interesting question that highlights the limitations of the factorial computation program in the calculator. Okay, so 1000 factorial divided by 999 factorial times 3 factorial. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve this. Now, if we want to do write out 1000 factorial, it's going to take us a lot of time. Writing this out will involve writing down 1000 times 999 times 998, and it will take a lot of time and space, not to even talk about multiplying them together. And then we have 999 factorial here, so that will be 999 times 998 times 997 all the way to 1. 3 factorial is not a problem, it's just 3 times 2, which is 6. So is there a trick we can use? Is there a technique we can use to simplify this problem considerably? Now one way you can look at the quotient of factorials is that the denominator terms are like problems. Okay? So you want to get rid of the problems. So 999 factorial and 3 factorial are 2 problems you want to get rid of. So the question is, which of these problems will you like to eradicate? If you have a big problem, consider this as a big problem, and this as a small problem. Which one would you rather have eliminated if you had the choice? You want the big problem taken care of so that you can focus on the smaller problem. Okay, so we have these 2 numbers here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to decompose 1000 factorial until I hit the composite form of 999 factorial, which is 999 factorial. Okay, and then I will break this down, decompose 3 factorial since it's a smaller problem. Alright, so the goal is to cancel out the bigger denominator and decompose the smaller denominator factorial. Alright, let's do it. So 1000 factorial, we're going to count down until we hit 999. So it's just simply 1000 times 999. You stop here. Factorial. Okay? This is a partial decomposition of 1000 factorial. Why are we stopping there? Well, because we have a match between this and the bigger problem in the denominator, which is 999 factorial. Okay? So keep the bigger problem for cancellation, and then you decompose the smaller one, 3 times 2 times 1. Okay? Now how do we proceed? If you notice, you have 999 factorial and 999 factorial here. These two divide out nicely. So we've successfully canceled out the bigger problem in the denominator, and we're left with a simpler problem. Alright, so the numerator is 1000 times 1, which is 1000, divided by 3 times 2 times 1, which is 6. This can be reduced further by dividing the numerator and denominator by 2, since they're both even. And then we have 1000 over 2 divided by 2 is 500, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So there goes your final answer for question number 3. Okay? Now the question is, how can we do this with a calculator? We're going to go over the correct way to enter it and go over some potential problems you can encounter when carrying out factorial calculations on big numbers. So to enter this, you are going to type 1000 factorial, which is math, probability 4, divided by, now since you have a product of two factors in the denominator, you have to group them in parentheses, or else your calculator will think that the first one is the denominator and the second is in the numerator. It'll group it incorrectly. So 1000 factorial divided by 999 factorial, math, probability 4, times 3 factorial, math, probability 4. Press enter. The calculator says quit. Actually has an overflow error. Okay, so what the calculator is trying to do is the calculator is trying to break down this entire number and these two numbers and divide it out. Okay, so that's why when you hit enter you have an error message. The calculator is not smart enough, or the programming is not efficient enough to exploit this pattern that we found here. Okay, so there are factorial problems that you actually have to know how to solve by hand, because the calculator cannot help you with those. Now let's take a look at question number 4, which is definitely solvable by the calculator since the numbers are not that large. So we have 9 factorial divided by 7 factorial, 3 factorial. So the goal here, remember, is to eliminate the bigger in the denominator, because you view it as a bigger problem, and then you decompose the smaller for reduction. Okay, so I'm going to decompose 9, and the question is, when I'm breaking down 9, I'm going to carry out a partial decomposition. Do I break down 9 all the way to 7, or do I break it down all the way to 3? Now the reality of the case is it doesn't really matter which one you break it out to, but one method is more efficient. That's what math is all about, looking for more efficient and faster ways to carry out computations. If I break down 9 to the bigger of the two, then it's going to be much easier for me to solve the problem, since the number I have to decompose has smaller product of factors. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 9 times 8 times 7 factorial, stop, because it matches the bigger one in the denominator. And then a small in the denominator, 3 times 2, can easily be decomposed. Okay, now what we're going to do is divide out that problem, that bigger problem in the denominator that's making this problem complicated. Take that out nicely. Now let's see if we can cross reduce. 3 goes into itself once, 3 goes into 9 3 times, 2 goes into itself once, 2 goes into 8 4 times. Now when you multiply across, you're going to have 3 times 4 times 1, which is 12. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. Your final answer is 12. Okay, let's take a look at what the calculator has to say about this answer that we just got. We have 9 factorial, 9 math probability 4 divided by, now what do we make sure we have to do in the denominator to avoid grouping errors? You want to make sure you use parentheses since you have multiple terms in the denominator. Okay? So to tell your calculator that 7 factorial and 3 factorial are together in the denominator, you have to use your parentheses. Extremely important. 7 factorial math, probability 4, and then 3 factorial 3 math, probability 4. Remember, you can always go to the catalog if you do not remember the sequence of buttons to give you the factorial operation. Okay? So let's see what the answer is. Answer is 12. Our answer that we got manually is correct. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. We appreciate it. If you found the contents of this tutorial helpful in your factorial studies, do give us a thumbs up. Your positive feedback is very valuable to us. If you have any questions or comments about the contents of this presentation, just place it in the comment section below, and we'll be more than glad to assist you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for updates to other tutorials such as this. We upload videos to our page on a consistent basis, so if you like notification of our latest uploads, do subscribe. More clips can be found on math.serve.com. Go ahead and check that out. Thanks again for watching, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.